a tense frontier, Poland's response to the Belarusian threat. The border between Poland and Belarus was once a quiet frontier, but recent events have turned it into a tense and watchful divide. The Polish Defence Minister, Mariusz Błaszczak, announced a significant move. Poland plans to deploy around 10,000 troops to support the border guard, with 6,000 in reserve and 4,000 directly assisting. The decision followed a series of alarming incidents, including the alleged violation of Polish airspace by Belarusian helicopters, which Błaszczak did not underestimate. He saw it as yet another provocation in a region where tensions have been growing. Everything that is happening in Belarus is coordinated with the actions of Russia, he said, implying a calculated maneuver. The unrest on the border was not a sudden escalation, but a growing concern since Wagner fighters were stationed in Belarus. The aborted mutiny by Yevgeny Prigozhin in June left ripples that reached the border, with joint military exercises announced near the NATO members' territory. Russia's response further fueled the situation, with Defence Minister Sergei Shoigu discussing plans to build up forces on the western borders. The landscape of Eastern Europe was shifting, with old alliances and new threats creating a delicate balance that Poland's move sought to address. The border was not just a line on the map, but a symbol of a region grappling with uncertainty, diplomacy, and the shadow of conflict. Kupyansk under fire. A night of shelling and loss. The night was shattered by the sound of shelling north of Kupyansk. 2 civilians were injured in the village of Kindrashivka, and the city council building in Kupyansk was struck in an airstrike. The Russian forces were intensifying their assault, a grim reality that Oleh Syniehubov, head of the Kharkov Regional Military Administration, reported with a heavy heart. The attack was not isolated. Settlements across the region were shelled with guided aerial bombs and other weapons. It was a night of terror that left its mark on the faces of those who lived through it. Yet in the darkness, there were glimmers of resilience. Ukrainian defences repelled attacks northeast of Kupyansk, standing firm in the face of relentless aggression. The call to evacuate children and those with limited mobility was heeded, a painful acknowledgement of the escalating danger. Kupyansk, a city liberated by Ukrainian forces last year, was once again a battleground. The toll on civilians was growing, with at least 3 killed and 9 others injured in recent days. The echoes of the bombardment were a stark reminder that war's cruelty does not distinguish between soldier and civilian, between young and old. Tragedy in Zaporizhzhia. 3 lives lost to a missile strike. Zaporizhzhia, a city in southern Ukraine, was a place of grief and sorrow. The death toll from a Russian missile strike had risen to 3, a somber update from the Ukrainian National Police. 2 civilians had been killed in the initial attack, and a woman succumbed to her injuries later that night in the hospital. Among the injured was an 11-month-old child, a devastating symbol of the conflict's reach into the most innocent of lives. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's response was resolute. He reiterated his call for more air defences and vowed to continue working with allies on obtaining us-made F-16 fighter jets. His words were not just political posturing, but a determined response to a tragic loss. In Zaporizhzhia, the shock of the attack lingered in the air. The missile's impact was not merely measured in rubble and ruin, but in the hearts and minds of a community touched by war. A city mourned, a nation resolved, and a leader stood firm. The events in Zaporizhzhia were more than a headline. They were a human story, a tragic chapter in a conflict that continued to claim lives and challenge the resolve of a people determined to defend their land.